This Syngonium Plant Care video is brought to you by our friends at Wild & Son. Syngonium are some of the most underrated, easy care houseplants out there. I can't figure out why everyone isn't obsessed with Syngonium, and I think it's because we're somewhat misled on the care of these plants. With a few very easy tweaks to your care routine on these plants, all of a sudden you'll find they're thriving, you're propagating them, you have more of these than you know what to do with, and they're so easy, they're gonna become one of your all-time favorite plants, I promise you. I found these beautiful white butterfly Syngonium on the Wild & Son website. I just thought they were stunning. I love the name white butterfly and that it's reflected in like the creamy white of these leaves with the lime green. So beautiful. And Wild & Son not only has a lot of houseplants, but they have tons of outdoor plants, annuals, perennials. I've ordered a lot of plants from them. I did a pollinator garden, which turned out really well. I did a perennial container garden, which thrived. I also created a succulent garden. I've ordered multiple houseplants from them and repotted them, and they're all doing great. So 10 out of 10 recommend. And if you go on their website and you find some plants you want, which I can pretty much guarantee you will, you can use a code Ashley10 and get 10% off your first order. Also, let me mention that you're always guaranteed a fun light show on my plant care videos lately, and that is because the building where I have my beautiful plant room, they actually have some things in place to get rid of the pigeons. So there's mirrors, there's inflatable guys, it's a whole thing, and it's very entertaining as I'm doing my repottings to like watch these things out on the porch out front, and also occasionally I'll see some pigeons. So anyways, if you're wondering what all the like flashing lights are, that's what's going on. These plants are native to Central and South America, and they grow along the forest floor, and then eventually they climb up trees. So they're like semi-epiphytic. As you can see, they're very arrow shaped, which is very typical to the Syngonium or arrowhead look. But when they are given the option to climb, they actually totally change their leaf form, and they develop multiple lobes. They look totally different in their adult form versus their juvenile form. Also, if you give them the opportunity to crawl, they can develop the multiple lobes as well. The great thing about these plants is you do have those multiple options. You can either let them grow up and climb up a trellis or climb up a moss pole and get like really jungle vibes, or you can keep them compact and bushy by just pruning them. So they're really easy to kind of curate to your aesthetic and what you're looking for in your home, which isn't the case with a lot of houseplants. A common misconception with Syngonium is that they are low light plants. A lot of times that's how they're sold to us. They're sold to us as low light plants. And the very dark green ones could probably handle lower light situations, but they are not going to thrive. In my experience, give these babies light and they will love it. I mean, in their natural habitats, they're getting that bright indirect light. So if you have a window that gets good light throughout the day, stick your Syngonium into that bright window. If you're not getting a lot of light throughout the day, maybe invest in a little supplemental grow light. There's lots of different options out there. As you can see, I have them all throughout my plant room. If your plants aren't growing, lighting could be a huge factor in that. I noticed that my plants were really struggling. I put a bunch of grow lights and boom, tons of new growth. Especially the ones that have the lighter leaf colors, like if it's white or light pink, they really do need more light. If you are somewhere that has scorching light through most of the day, there is a chance that the leaves will get sunburned, so pull it back from the window a little bit. The other misconception is watering. I think these plants are sold as like not needing much watering, and in my experience, these plants really need a good drink. Now, Syngonium don't have as thick of leaves as say philodendron or some of these other plants that we have, and so what happens is they get really thirsty. They can't store a lot of water in their leaves like our other houseplants, so they'll like droop over, and then what ends up happening is the leaves die off, they start crisping, we're wondering what's wrong with our plants, and it's because they need more consistent watering. So with Syngonium, I know a lot of times we're told like let the plant completely dry out and then give it a drink. In my experience, that's not the best method for watering these plants. They really want to have at least some moisture in the soil at all times. So I'd say when it's about halfway dry, then give your plant a good drink. And they'll love you for it. The other thing that's nice about these plants is they don't need distilled water, they don't need rainwater, like they can handle tap water. Soil is so important, especially for Syngonium, because like I said, they're semi-epiphytic, like they usually do grow up the sides of trees, so they really enjoy an airy, chunky soil mixture. So you can easily make your own. I'd suggest using like a 50% potting mix, standard potting mix, and then 50% other substrate, like orchid bark or perlite or pumice, because that's going to make it very well draining, so that even though you're consistently giving your Syngonium a drink, it's still going to have the ability to get rid of any excess moisture that will allow like the roots to have airflow and not have root rot, because that's the biggest thing that we want to prevent with any houseplant is root rot, because once that happens, then your chance has a very, very low survival rate, like super low. Like you could chop it and prop it and hope that your propagations will make it, but the plant itself is probably, chances are very slim that it's going to make it. Here's an example of a really great soil recipe. You can see there's orchid bark, there's like pumice in there, there's perlite, but there's also potting mix to help retain moisture. But all of this is going to help it be well draining enough so the plant won't be sitting in soggy soil. And you can tell if a plant has root rot because the roots themselves turn black and mushy. They'll have a bad smell to them. This looks really good. The roots are pretty compact here. So you see how it's healthy? There's not any brown mushy roots. There's not a funky smell. Very healthy. Look, it even has a little baby leaf coming out. Let's take a look at this one too. Oh, this one even has some roots growing out the bottom. How to know when it's the right time to repot. So when you see like roots coming out the bottom, roots coming out the top, that's always a good time to know. If your soil's not retaining moisture any longer, and meaning that it's become hydrophobic, where when you water it, the water just like sits on the top or just goes like straight through to the bottom, and the soil's not retaining any moisture, that's a good time to repot. If your plant, it's just been a few years and you haven't repotted, that's a really good time, because the soil can get mineral buildup, and it can also have a lot harder time holding on to like nutrients. So it's just a good idea every few years to repot your Syngonium anyways. So you always want to go 1 to 2 inches larger than the root ball, not the nursery pot, because sometimes the plant will be potted up in a pot that's too large, and if you go 1 to 2 inches bigger than a pot that's already too large for the root ball, then you're going to have much higher chance of too high of a soil to roots ratio, and then you're going to have all this excess soil holding on to all this excess water, and the roots aren't going to be able to absorb that moisture, and you're gonna probably get root rot, which is, we're doing everything in our power to avoid root rot. So these plants don't need a ton of room. They need 1 to 2 inches. This is gonna be too small, unfortunately. So let me see if I can find a pot. So let's talk about the type of pot. Something like this is far superior to something like this, because with the clear nursery pots, I can keep an eye on the roots at all times. I can check the moisture, I can see how the roots are doing, I can see if the plant is becoming compact, if there's too much water. The other thing, no matter what type of pot you use, you want to make sure that there's a lot of drainage holes. So these are great because it's drainage holes on the bottom and on the sides to help promote airflow and also allow any excess moisture to drain out. Unfortunately, I have run out of these. I have to place a new order with rePotme, so I'm going to be using this type of nursery pot, which still has a lot of drainage holes, which is great, but unfortunately it's not as good as this. But what are you going to do? But it allows the plant more room, which it needs. If you're somebody who loves to be watering their plant all the time, you could go with terracotta because it wicks away excess moisture. For me, I love to use plastic or ceramic because it does allow me to have to water less because it kind of keeps the moisture in there. And for me, I also don't like to disturb the roots a ton when I'm repotting because I just feel like that plant has to spend a lot of time repairing its roots. But you'll be surprised how tough houseplants are, Syngonium are, like they're tough. So if you're a little rough with them, it's totally fine. They can handle it. Now, Syngonium are fast growing plants. So if you notice your Syngonium's like not putting out any new growth or it's very slow, there's something wrong. Like it needs more light, it needs more watering, it needs more fertilizing, it needs to be repotted, maybe it's root bound, something's going on. But you can expect fast growth from these plants, which can be really fun. And the good thing is if your plant is growing too fast and you want to keep it compact and bushy, just prune it back. Literally just go boop and it'll come right back quickly. It doesn't take long. Like other plants, it might take forever for it to grow back, but it doesn't take that long. After you've repotted your plant, make sure to give it a really good drink. Water it from the top. Bottom watering is great, but you want to save that until after you've given it its initial watering from the top. Watering from the top allows it to like kind of sink into the soil, find its spot. It won't be as wobbly. Now that you have really great soil in there, the chances of it retaining too much moisture is not an issue anymore. So you can give your plant a really good drink. You don't have to kind of be super sensitive. Just give it as much water until you feel that it's like thoroughly absorbed throughout. And then this is what I mean for well draining, that it's just going to be draining out any excess moisture. So yeah, just keep giving it water until it's thoroughly soaked through. I'm letting this sit in water, by the way, I forgot to mention that. I'll probably let it sit in the water for about 30 minutes to an hour, just to make sure that it's really absorbing water all throughout. And then I'll dump out the excess water, and then at that point I'll put it into my cover pot. The trick with a cover pot is, though, to make sure that your plant is never just sitting in excess water longer than like 30 minutes or an hour, because if that happens, then you're gonna run into problems with too much moisture and it's going to cause root rot and it's going to kill off that plant. So for temperature, I always say if you're comfortable, your plant's comfortable. If you're cold, your plant is cold. So keep these away from really cold windows, away from cold drafts. They also are rainforest plants, so they love high humidity. That's what they're used to. However, they're super forgiving and adaptable plants, so they'll be all right if they don't have super high humidity, but they probably would really thrive in 40% humidity and above. So if you find that you are needing more humidity than that and you're seeing a lot of crisping on the leaves, then maybe think about investing in a humidifier or something like that. These plants have a lot of foliage and they grow fast, so they are going to definitely appreciate some fertilizing, especially during the growing months, from spring through fall. Now in the wintertime, they will go dormant, they'll slow their growing process, they'll kill off some of their old leaves, so don't worry about fertilizing in the winter months. Now when you're just starting to fertilize, now what I like to do is get a water-soluble fertilizer that I can just put in my watering can, and then I just water and fertilize at the same time, saves me effort. So I'd say start at about 50% strength to what the back of the fertilizer bottle says to start with, and then if your plants respond well to it, then go to full strength, because sometimes fertilizing can burn the roots of the plant and cause problems. Propagating Syngonium is very easy. Whether your plant has become very, very leggy and you just want to trim it back, or if you just want more of that plant, it's super easy. So this is a Syngonium chia pens. It's an uncommon Syngonium. You don't see them around that often. So when this plant became really leggy and just didn't look good anymore, I thought, I just need to propagate this thing and start over. So that's what I did. And you can see here where it had the original stem, and I just trimmed it right under a node. So I'll show you what a node looks like. This right here is actually a node, and I could have trimmed it here as well. But you can see that the plant, once it was trimmed back, just started a whole new offshoot, and it's doing really, really well. Then once you trim under the node, there's a couple things you can do. The easiest way, in my experience, is to just put it in water. And this is not treated water. It's a little gunky. It needs to be refreshed with new water at this point. But all I did was put it in tap water. Again, Syngonium are pretty cool with tap water, so I just put it in tap water. It's been a couple of months, and I don't know if you can see, but there's roots all in it, and it's actually ready to be repotted up in soil. And it has put out a bunch of new leaves. The old leaf died off, and these are like 3 new leaves that have come out. So it's a very, very happy Syngonium. The other thing that I did, and that you could do, is I chopped off little pieces of the node, and there weren't any leaves on it. And I didn't have a prop box at the time. Usually you can use like a clear Tupperware or something like that. I ended up just using a Ziploc bag, and I took sphagnum moss that I made moist. I made sure it wasn't drenched, and I just put it in here with the little chopped up nodes. So here's an example of what that looks like. So you can see this is the sphagnum moss with the roots attached, but it was just a little piece of the node, and it's putting out all sorts of cute little new plants. So this whole bag is filled up with chia pens plants. So I think that maybe in another video soon, I'm gonna just pot up a whole new pot full of Syngonium chia pens between these and this. I mean, Syngonium are awesome because you can just easily propagate them, and they are so fast growing it doesn't take long. I've started tacking on a pest management portion into every plant care video because it's a big struggle when you have houseplants to know what to do to get rid of like fungus gnats I get asked about constantly. Mealybugs are a huge pain. Thrips are just awful. Spider mites, but it doesn't need to be a big deal. It doesn't need to be the end of the world. So my first product I recommend is called Systemic Granules, and these are amazing. I order these from Amazon, and what I do is I actually just sprinkle it into the soil, and I'll sprinkle it into this soil as well. And it has the amount that you need on the back. But what this does is it has an active ingredient that the plant absorbs, and then that active ingredient kills off any pests. So after you sprinkle it into the soil, water your plant, and then that's how the plant absorbs the ingredient. It does take a little while to work, so just make sure you're like consistently using it for what it says. I think it's like every 6 weeks. The one thing I have noticed with this is it can kind of like cake up on top of the soil, so you might want to get a chopstick or something every time to just kind of like loosen up the soil a little bit so it doesn't become compacted and hydrophobic. But this stuff works like a charm. I have also found that this has gotten rid of my fungus gnat problem, and it's just been great. Then the other one is insecticidal soap. This you spray on the leaves of the plant. So we're tackling the roots. The plant itself is going to have that active ingredient to get rid of pests. This is going to help until this kicks in. So this is going to get rid of anything on the leaves. Spider mites it works great for, thrips, mealybugs, all the above. Really, really terrific product. Any brand of these is fine, is great. They're all basically the same. So yeah, I've had a ton of success with these. And don't forget to check out the Wild and Sun website to see if there's any beautiful plants that you'd love to add to your collection, indoor and outdoor. And if you find some that you like, use code Ashley10 to get 10% off your first order. And I have links in my description below to their website. So there you have it. Those are my top Syngonium care tips. I hope this video is helpful. We have a very knowledgeable plant community, so feel free to leave your tips and tricks in the comments, not just for myself, but for everybody. And I promise you, if you follow these tips, your Syngonium is going to absolutely love you. It's going to thrive. And if you'd like to see future planty videos in your newsfeed, feel free to subscribe. And we also have a great community on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I get to see you soon. Bye.